Start small. Momentum beats motivation. One of the biggest lies we tell ourselves is that we need to feel motivated before we take action. We wait for the perfect mood, the ideal environment, or that sudden surge of inspiration. But the truth is, motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes like the weather. Unpredictable, inconsistent, and unreliable. If we wait for motivation to strike before we begin, we may find ourselves stuck in place for days, weeks, or even months. What actually gets things moving, what truly creates results, is momentum. Momentum begins with movement. And movement doesn't require motivation. It just requires one small step. That could be something as simple as opening your laptop, putting on your shoes, writing one sentence, or doing a 2-minute stretch. These are not world-changing actions on their own, but they have a powerful psychological effect. They break inertia. Inertia is the resistance to start, and it's strongest when you are at a standstill. Think of a train. Getting it to move from a full stop takes enormous effort, but once it's moving, it's much easier to keep it going. Your mind works the same way. When you're lying in bed or staring blankly at your screen, the task ahead feels enormous, too big, too overwhelming. But the moment you take even the smallest step, you begin to shift your state. You send a signal to your brain. I'm not stuck. I'm in motion. That's when things start to change. Momentum also builds confidence. Every small step you complete proves to yourself that you are capable. That proof becomes fuel. It turns into internal encouragement. If I did that, maybe I can do a little more. Over time, these little steps stack up. They become habits. And habits, not bursts of motivation, are what build long-term success. So the next time you feel too lazy to do something, don't tell yourself you have to do it all. Don't even tell yourself you have to do it well. Just promise yourself you'll do something, anything, for 5 minutes. Because 5 minutes of progress beats 0 minutes of perfection every single time. And once you start, you may find that you don't want to stop. Understand the root cause. Laziness is often just the surface level label we give to something much deeper. When we say, I feel lazy, what we're really expressing is often confusion, fatigue, fear, or even a sense of meaninglessness. But because it's easier to call it laziness, we rarely investigate further. And that's where the problem begins. Sometimes, what we label as laziness is actually burnout. You've been pushing yourself too hard for too long, without proper rest, and now your body and mind are rebelling. You're not lazy. You're exhausted. Other times, it's boredom. You're uninspired because the task in front of you doesn't challenge you, excite you, or connect with your interests. In such cases, the issue isn't a lack of will, but a lack of meaningful stimulation. Fear is another powerful but hidden root. You may fear failure, so you avoid starting. You may fear success, so you sabotage your own momentum. Or maybe it's perfectionism, the belief that if it can't be done perfectly, it's not worth doing at all. In these cases, laziness becomes a mask for fear, a silent way of staying safe, of not exposing yourself to judgment, mistakes, or the unknown. There's also a lack of clarity. When you're unsure about what exactly needs to be done, when there's no clear goal, no specific step to take, your brain freezes. Ambiguity leads to avoidance. You don't move because you don't know where to begin. That paralysis is mistaken for laziness, when in reality, it's a lack of direction. Even mental health plays a role. Depression, anxiety, ADHD, and other psychological factors can drain your energy, fog your thinking, and disrupt your motivation. When your mind is in survival mode, productivity becomes secondary. And yet, we blame ourselves for being lazy, instead of recognizing that we may need help, healing, or support. The truth is, laziness is rarely the problem, it's a symptom. And like any symptom, it only goes away when you treat the underlying cause. That's why self-inquiry is so powerful. The next time you feel unmotivated, don't just say, I'm being lazy. Ask instead, what am I avoiding? What do I really feel? What's missing here? This kind of curiosity replaces self-criticism, with understanding, and from understanding, real change becomes possible. Reframe laziness as a signal, not a flaw. Most of us have been conditioned to believe that laziness is a moral failing, a sign of weakness, irresponsibility, or a lack of discipline. From a young age, we're told that productivity equals worth. And if we're not constantly doing something useful, then we're wasting time, wasting potential, or worse, wasting our lives. This belief system turns rest into guilt, hesitation into shame, and pauses into personal attacks on our identity. But what if we looked at laziness differently? What if, instead of treating it as a character defect, we treated it as a signal, a message from within, pointing to something important? When you feel lazy, it may be your mind telling you that you're overwhelmed, that your to-do list has outgrown your capacity, and that you're running on fumes. Or maybe it's your body's quiet plea for rest, asking for recovery after too many days of pushing without pause. It could be your intuition, telling you that the work you're avoiding isn't aligned with your values, your goals, or your purpose. In other words, that lazy feeling may not be laziness at all. It may be intelligent. It may be wisdom trying to communicate through fatigue, distraction, or resistance. Our bodies and minds speak to us all the time, not in words, but in signals. Procrastination, avoidance, mental fog, or that heaviness in your chest when you try to get started on something you don't want to do. These are not signs that you're broken. They're signs that something is off. Maybe the task is too big and needs to be broken down. Maybe your expectations are unrealistic. Maybe you're living someone else's dream, not your own. Or maybe you just need sleep, nutrition, or connection. Reframing laziness as a signal allows you to replace blame with curiosity. Instead of saying, "What's wrong with me?" ask, "What is this feeling trying to tell me?" That shift changes everything. It opens the door to insight, to empathy for yourself, and to wiser decisions. You move from a harsh inner critic to a compassionate inner observer, and that mindset is far more effective for real growth and sustainable motivation. When we ignore these signals, we risk deeper exhaustion, chronic stress, and even burnout. But when we listen, we can respond with adjustments, a shorter task list, a clearer goal, a break, or a realignment with what actually matters to us. In that way, what we call laziness becomes not the enemy of progress, but a guide toward it. Break the myth of constant hustle. In today's culture, hustle is glorified. We live in a world that worships busyness, where being always on, constantly working, and grinding late into the night are worn like badges of honor. Social media amplifies this mindset, showing highlight reels of people who seem to work 18-hour days, start 5 companies by 25, and still manage to post motivational quotes with perfectly filtered smiles. The underlying message is loud and clear. If you're not hustling every waking hour, you're falling behind. But this myth, the myth of constant hustle, is not only unrealistic, it's dangerous. It sets people up for burnout, anxiety, and a distorted sense of self-worth based solely on productivity. It turns rest into guilt, and silence into discomfort. It teaches you that if you take a break, you're weak. That if you're not ahead, you're a failure. That if you're not tired, you're not trying hard enough. This mindset is unsustainable. Human beings are not machines. We are cyclical by nature. Just as seasons have rhythms, with periods of growth, harvest and dormancy, so do we. Expecting ourselves to be in summer mode all year round is a recipe for collapse. The truth is, rest is not the opposite of productivity. It's a crucial part of it. The best ideas, the deepest focus, and the most consistent progress come when your body and mind are replenished. You can sprint for a while, but no one sprints forever. Great thinkers, artists, athletes, and leaders across history have understood the value of rest. Einstein took long walks. Churchill napped daily. Simone Biles stepped back from Olympic competition to protect her mental health. These were not signs of weakness. They were signs of the ability to pause, to reflect, to recover, is not a detour from success. It's part of the path. There is power in pacing yourself. Sustainable effort is better than erratic bursts. A focused 2 hours of deep work can achieve more than 10 hours of distracted grinding. Your energy is a finite resource. If you burn it all trying to be on every moment, you'll have nothing left for the things that matter most. creativity, connection, clarity, and joy. So when you feel lazy, maybe you're not lazy at all. Maybe you're resisting the pressure to overextend yourself. Maybe your mind is quietly pushing back against a world that tells you your only value lies in output. The myth of constant hustle says never stop. But real wisdom says, stop when you need to, so you can start again stronger. Build systems, not willpower. We often overestimate the power of willpower. We think success belongs to the most disciplined, the ones who can force themselves to wake up at 5 a.m., grind through tasks, no matter how they feel, and resist every temptation with steely determination. But here's the truth. Willpower is a limited resource. It's like a battery, strong at the beginning of the day, but gradually drained by every decision, distraction, and demand you face. The more you rely on it, the faster it depletes. That's why people who appear endlessly productive aren't relying on willpower alone. They've built systems. Systems are structured routines, habits, and environments that reduce the need for constant decision-making and internal struggle. When you have a system in place, you don't have to think about what to do. The path is already laid out. For example, if you want to exercise regularly, depending on willpower means deciding every day, should I work out? What kind of workout should I do? When should I do it? Each of these decisions becomes an opportunity for resistance or avoidance. But with a system, like scheduling workouts in advance, laying out your clothes the night before, or having a workout partner, you remove friction. The system guides your behavior, even on days when you don't feel like it. Systems also work because they make habits automatic. You don't will yourself to brush your teeth every morning, you just do it. That's the power of habit. Once something becomes part of your routine, it doesn't require the same mental effort to start. You've trained your brain to expect it, even crave it. The beauty of systems is that they can be customized to fit your life and energy levels. You can design your environment to reduce distractions, keeping your phone in another room while you work, setting up timers for focused sessions, or using apps that block social media. You can use triggers, like starting your day with a cup of coffee and journaling, to create consistency. You can batch similar tasks together, automate small decisions, or create checklists to keep yourself on track. Most importantly, systems are forgiving. When you rely solely on willpower, every failure feels personal. You miss a task, and you think, I'm lazy, I have no discipline. But when you use systems, the focus shifts from who you are to how you're working. If something goes wrong, you don't attack yourself. You adjust the system. Maybe your morning routine needs to be shorter. Maybe your workspace needs to be quieter. The process becomes less emotional and more strategic. This mindset, designing systems instead of demanding perfection from yourself, is what creates sustainable progress. It's not about grinding harder every day. It's about building smarter foundations. Willpower fades, motivation wavers, but systems stay. And when you build the right ones, even your laziest days can still move you forward. Use the 5-minute rule. One of the most deceptively simple yet powerful techniques for overcoming laziness is the 5-minute rule. At its core, it's based on a single idea: commit to doing a task for just 5 minutes. That's it. Not finishing the task, not doing it perfectly, just starting, and only for a short, manageable time. Why does this work? Because often the hardest part of any task is simply beginning. Our minds tend to inflate the difficulty of what lies ahead. That email you've been avoiding feels like it'll take an hour. That essay seems like it'll drain your soul. That workout feels like climbing a mountain. So instead of confronting the discomfort of starting, we delay. We tell ourselves we'll do it later, when we're more motivated, more rested, more focused. But later rarely comes. The 5-minute rule bypasses this mental resistance. By shrinking the commitment, you lower the psychological barrier to entry. 5 minutes doesn't feel threatening. It's not overwhelming. You can handle 5 minutes, even on your worst day. You could probably do it in your sleep. And because the brain hates open loops, starting almost always leads to continuing. Once you're in motion, you're far more likely to keep going. This trick works because it shifts the goal from completing the task to simply starting the task. It doesn't demand perfection, only presence. There's no pressure to succeed or to do it right. You give yourself permission to stop after 5 minutes if you want to, and sometimes you will. But far more often, you'll find that once you're in the flow, you naturally want to keep going. What felt impossible 5 minutes ago suddenly becomes manageable. The 5-minute rule also breaks the cycle of procrastination. When we avoid tasks, we often carry around guilt and anxiety, even when we're not actively thinking about them. that mental burden builds up, weighing on our mood and our self-esteem. But by starting, even just for 5 minutes, you reclaim a sense of agency. You prove to yourself that you're not stuck, not helpless, not defined by inaction. You're capable, you took action, and that small victory creates momentum. This rule can be applied to nearly anything: studying, cleaning, writing, organizing your thoughts, making a phone call, starting a workout. It works across all domains, because it respects how the human brain responds to friction. By minimizing that friction, you remove the excuses, and reduce the emotional load that comes with facing large, ambiguous, or uncomfortable tasks. Some people even find it helpful to set a timer: 5 minutes, no more. That timer is like a safety net. It reassures your brain that you're not trapping yourself in a long, miserable grind. And yet, more often than not, you'll end up resetting the timer. Because once the engine starts, the journey doesn't feel so daunting anymore. Visualize the cost of inaction. We often talk about goals in terms of what we want to gain: success, happiness, health, freedom. But what we rarely stop to consider is what we are losing every time we don't act. Every time we procrastinate, delay, or give in to laziness, there is a hidden cost, and it's far greater than we usually acknowledge. Most of us are driven by either the desire for reward or the fear of loss. But while dreaming about rewards can sometimes feel abstract or far away, the pain of loss can create a more immediate emotional response. That's why visualizing the cost of inaction can be a powerful motivator. It brings the future consequences of your present choices into sharp, undeniable focus. Ask yourself, what does doing nothing actually cost me? Not in money or minutes, but in meaning. What are you trading every time you choose comfort over commitment? Perhaps it's lost time, months or years you'll never get back. Maybe it's missed opportunities, the job you didn't apply for, the project you didn't start, the skill you didn't build. Maybe it's relationships that never deepened, dreams that quietly faded, or a version of yourself that you're slowly drifting away from. One of the hardest truths to swallow is that time keeps moving, whether we do or not. The world doesn't pause while we wait to feel ready. And every time you delay, you're not just standing still, you're falling behind the person you could become. That future version of you, the one who's confident, capable, fulfilled. They're not waiting for you to be motivated. They're waiting for you to start. And yet, this isn't about shame. It's not about beating yourself up or living in regret. It's about waking up. It's about realizing that each moment of hesitation is a choice, a silent yes to comfort, and a silent no to growth. It's about understanding that your future isn't built in dramatic leaps, but in daily, often uncomfortable decisions to keep moving forward, when it would be easier to stay still. Visualizing the cost of inaction also makes your goals more urgent. If you want to get fit, imagine not just the body you want, but the health risks you may face if you don't act. If you want to write a book, imagine the ache of knowing you had something to say, but never said it. If you want to start a business, imagine staying stuck in a job that drains you for the next 10 years. When you see the cost clearly, inaction stops feeling neutral. It becomes a decision with weight. This technique turns laziness into awareness. It brings emotion into the equation, and emotion, especially pain, is a powerful motivator. When the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the discomfort of changing, that's when action happens. And by visualizing the cost of inaction, you can reach that tipping point before life forces it on you. Certainly, here's a powerful and reflective ending to your speech titled "When You Feel Lazy." So the next time you feel lazy, don't rush to judge yourself. Pause. Listen, reflect. Maybe you're tired, maybe you're overwhelmed, maybe you're disconnected from your purpose, or maybe you're simply human. Laziness isn't a flaw, it's a message. And if you learn to understand it, work with it, and rise gently above it, you'll discover that progress isn't about constant hustle. It's about consistent, honest steps in the direction that matters. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be fast. You just need to begin. Because the difference between a life that moves and a life that stalls is not motivation, it's motion. And even the smallest step today can shape the story of who you become tomorrow. Start now, not when you feel like it, not when it's easy, but now, because your future is waiting for the courage of your present.